بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Alhamdulillah, in our lessons on Imam Bahraq's work on revitalizing the heart, titled The Firm Grasp, Al-Urwatul Wathiqa, we have, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reached the chapter on the counsels in eights. And this chapter has three main themes. The first is a very simple act that is a key to opening the gates of heaven. And it seems like a very small act, but, and like each of these advices being taken from prophetic teachings, it's based on a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that if you take this care of this simple matter, the gates of heaven are open for you. The second is, again, an apparently small matter, but that has great consequence, which is a dhikr to do by morning and night. That is a protection from hellfire. And the third is to take heed from the example of a dog. And we'll talk about the dog in a minute, inshallah. So, this advice is contained in 3 lines of the chapter in eights. Right? So it's lines 28 onwards. And the author has this very interesting style that each chapter has 3 sets of lines, but the advices are according to the chapter number. So chapter 1 had 1, is the chapter of the advices in ones. Last chapter was the advices in sevens, and there's 7 advices contained over the 3 lines, right? And that's the famous hadith of those under the shade of the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today is the chapter on eights. So he says, and bear witness by morning and by night to the transcendence of the Lord of establishment. Right? And you will find that the doors of hell are closed for you. And you'll find that the doors of hell will be closed for you, right? By this act, right? And we'll see what this refers to, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, right? That if you bear witness by day and by night to the transcendence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the doors of hell will be closed for you. The second advice is, and bear witness, right? So, sorry, the first is that, sorry, I'm having just a little bit of trouble. My mistake, my slides keep crashing. My apologies. So he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, that the gates of heaven, if you close your tahara with the statement of divine oneness, the gates of heaven, all 8 of them will be open for you, and the gates of hell closed. Right? The gates of heaven, if you close your tahara with the statement of divine oneness, will be open for you, all 8 of them. And the gates of hell will be closed. And this, we will see in a moment, goes back to a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that whoever does wudu and does so well, all the 8 gates of heaven open for them. They can enter it from whichever door they wish. And one hadith actually only mentions that. Whoever does their wudu and does so well. Others mention whoever does wudu, does so well, and then says the testification of faith. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Right? وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ, the gates of heaven will be opened for them. And ideally you should do both, right? And we'll look at, so that's the first advice. The second advice is, bear witness by morning and night to the transcendence of the Lord of the throne, right? As do 8 intense angels. And we'll look at, and 8 intense angels, because and this is pointing to the fact that we bear witness to Allah, as do the angels that carry the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we'll see that in a moment. Bear witness by morning and by night to the transcendence of Allah. And this is pointing to a particular dua of the Prophet ﷺ that he encouraged us to say by morning and by night, but also more broadly, the dhikr that we recite, that the Prophet ﷺ has encouraged us to recite by morning and by night. And night is optimally, of course, any time after Maghrib. There's dhikr that is recommended to say by morning and by night. All of them have many wisdoms, one of which is affirming the transcendence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The transcendence and greatness of Allah. Right? And that's one of the things that, of course, along with, of course, the most important thing is our Fajr prayer, but the dhikr of the morning and by night, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to it in many places in the Quran. And what it does, if you do it with consistency, secondly, by meaning it, it cultivates a sense of the greatness of God in your heart and in your life, right? And this is something the angels bear witness to as well. And we'll see the hadith. And the third, take heed, he says, from Ahl al-Kahf, right? And remember that with them was an 8th who attained all honor by keeping the company of those noble. Who was the 8th among the people of the cave? Was the dog. Right? Was the dog. The dog, just by keeping the company of the people of the cave, got to be mentioned in the Quran. Right? And the dog wasn't there for the same purpose that the people of the cave were. The people of the cave left their town to safeguard their religion. It had a very noble purpose. What was the purpose of the dog? Just accompanying the people of good. So take heed from that. Right? And of course, in some classical cultures, they did use this as a metaphor very frequently. I was stuck, and sometimes you just have to listen to your elders. I was stuck in Damascus one day having to serve this elderly Afghani sheikh who lived in Karachi. I don't know why. So Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Shaghuri's Khadim, Abu Munir, told me, take care of this man. I'm like, he looks healthy and fine. Like, he looked more fit than I did. I was 280 pounds at the time. He although he had a white beard, he was, a strong Pathan. But I was stuck carrying his stuff all day, and it was actually very beneficial. But he went to visit Sheikh Abdurrahman al-Shaghuri, and he said, and strong, tough, but very healthy Afghani man, old, majestic white beard, strong man. He says, Sheikh, ana kalbukum. I'm your dog. Now, Sheikh Abdurrahman was quite elderly, and it was a big contract because Sheikh Abdurrahman was like, if the Afghani Sheikh was like a thumb, Sheikh Abdurrahman was like the little finger, because he was quite frail at that time, but very majestic. He was shocked, because he couldn't believe his ears. So he asked Sidi Abu Munir, what did he say? Because he said, did he mean, see, because qalbukum means I'm your heart. But in the Arab world, they don't say this expression. Ana kalbukum, I'm your dog. So Abu Munir couldn't repeat it. Because they don't say, he's saying he's your dog. That's like in Arab culture, it's totally unacceptable. So the Afghani Sheikh repeated it several times. And then Sheikh Abdurrahman Shawi said, La anta qalbi, you're my heart. And Afghani Sheikh big, strong man, just broke down crying. So the dog of the people of the cave in a lot of Persian poetry, etc., is used as a metaphor, right? For the benefit of good company, also as a metaphor for loyalty, right? Loyalty being so powerful. So these are 3 counsels. The first of these, right, tells us about how to open the gates of heaven, right? How to open the gates of heaven. And this is by following the hadith of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, right? The hadith of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, that he says, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that من توضأ فأحسن الوضوء, whoever makes wudu and does so with excellence, خرجت خطاياه من جسده, their errors leave their body, حتى تخرج من تحت أظفاره, leaving even from under their nails, right? And similarly, it's come from the Prophet ﷺ that whoever does wudu and does so in this way, right, like his wudu sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then all their past and future sins are forgiven, and then their prayer counts as a nafila, counts as pure increase. Because nafil, the nafil is extra, is increase. That's the power of wudu. Sometimes we think wudu is a small matter. Just do it. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever performs wudu and does so well, does so like the wudu of the Prophet ﷺ, past and future sins are wiped away, and then their prayer is pure increase. Because prayer prevents from sin and wrong and all these things. Prayer expiates for what you did between one prayer and the other, etc. But the prayer would be nafila, would be pure increase. What does it entail to do wudu well? In this hadith, من توضأ فأحسن الوضوء. In other hadiths, the Prophet said, من أسبغ الوضوء. Right? Whoever does wudu completely. Right? The Prophet also said, should I not tell you the things that expiate for sins? And one of them is إسباغ الوضوء على المكاره, is to make wudu completely when it's disliked. That someone had a wonderful idea, let's save some money by keeping the water boiler off at night. So wudu is cold for wudu. Or say, let's be like the early Muslims. We'll make wudu with cold water. There's no merit in self-inflicted pain, right? Per se. But you did it. So then, making wudu when it's difficult, or you went camping and the water is cold. Making wudu completely, even when it's dislikable because of the water being cold or cold weather or you're tired or whatever, is expiatory. That's one aspect. Then when one finishes the wudu, to do the sunnah du'as after wudu. Right? What are the sunnah du'as after wudu? To say the 2 shahadas. Right? أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. And then you make dua. اللهم اجعلني من التوابين واجعلني من المتطهرين. Oh Allah, make me of the oft repentant and of those who purify themselves. Right? And if one does so, now why is that so significant? It is significant, the author in his commentary explains, because doing wudu well, with excellence, one is the first step in praying with excellence. Because if you're conscious of Allah in the wudu and you follow the sunnah in the wudu for the sake of Allah, is it really conceivable that afterwards you're going to pray badly? Right? Which is why presence of heart in the wudu is the miftah, is the key to presence of heart in the prayer. That's one reason. The second, because Allah has placed so much reward and benefit in the wudu. The third reason is because the outward purification is a reminder of the inward purification. Because there are levels of purification. That just as we purify our limbs, right? Ritually, to be able to pray, we should also strive to purify our actions from sin. We should strive to purify our character from blameworthy character. We should strive to purify our souls from being distracted from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And a true wudu, a complete wudu, a wudu with excellence would reflect on these. That I am purifying myself not only to be able to pray. Prayer is the beginning of devotion, right? I want to purify myself to be able to pray and to do so well. But then I want to purify myself from disobedience of Allah. Then I want to purify myself from blameworthy character. Then I want to purify my soul from heedlessness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are all levels of purification. And if you do that, the gates of heaven open. Of course, the gates open doesn't mean they remain eternally open. Right? Doors open, but they also close. Right? When we were at university, this Somali brother told me that when he was leaving Somalia, his mother made dua for him that may Allah open the doors of good for you. His first time he left Somalia, in the airport in Germany, reached one set of doors, the doors opened. He was so amazed, he did Salat al-Shukr. Two rak'ahs of shukr to Allah. My mother made dua that may Allah open the doors of good. First set of doors I came to, they opened. Went to the second set of doors, it happened. They opened. So he prayed 2 rak'ahs Salat al-Shukr. Then he realized there's a pattern to it. Right? So, but doors, just as they open, they also close. Right? So if you make wudu, you do it well, it's not like a get out of jail free card. The doors open, but they say that, but then you need to keep them open. Because what you do after may close some or many of the doors to you. Right? So it's not a free pass. Right? And the second thing that he tells us here in these lines that we looked at is to make dhikr by morning and night out of affirming the transcendence of Allah. And particularly, this is referring to a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that من قال حين يمسي أو يصبح, whoever says whenever they enter morning or evening, اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن محمدا عبدك ورسولك. Right? That whoever says by morning and by night, Allahumma inni asbahtu ushiduka, O Allah, I enter this morning bearing witness to you, and I bear witness to the bearers of the throne, who are 8, and I bear witness to all your angels. You're bearing witness to Allah and to the angels of the throne and to all the angels, بِأَنَّكَ أَنْتَ اللَّهِ, that you are truly Allah. So you're not just addressing Allah, but you're addressing the angels of the throne and all the angels. Right? That you are indeed Allah. وَحْدَكَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَكَ. Right? You are truly, that there's no God but you, alone without partner. وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُكَ وَرَسُولُكَ, and that Muhammad is your servant and messenger. If you do this, right? Of course, if you say it, you have reward. But if you really mean it, that you're bearing witness to Allah, and you're bearing witness to the angels bearing the throne, who are 8 sets of angels, right? And to all the angels in existence, I bear witness to them that you are indeed Allah, alone without partner. And I bear witness likewise that Muhammad is his servant, his perfect servant and messenger. What happens? This is an expiation, right? Right? And whoever says this 4 times, It's an expiation for them from the fire. Right? Now you have reward for it. Some said it's expiation from the fire if you say it regularly. But the other is if you truly mean it, right? That you're really bearing witness to Allah, to the angels of the throne, and to all the angels, and you really mean this. The dhikr of morning and night, the simple thing is just be consistent in it. Have a routine of dhikr at Fajr time, even if it be 2 or 3 minutes. There's many dhikrs. But all of them cultivate tawheed. Right? And it's meant to transform your living. Right? By morning and likewise at Maghrib time. Or any time later at night. And one of them is this dhikr. Another is to say 10 times. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. لا إله إلا الله, there's no God but Him. Alone without partner. له الملك, His is all dominion and His is all praise. يحيي ويميت in some narrations. He gives life and He gives death. بيده الخير, in His grasp is all good. وهو على كل شيء قدير, and He has power over all things. Now if you say it, there's reward. But again, strive to mean this dhikr. Right? It's better to do some of the prophetic dhikrs, but really to embrace its meaning. Then buzz through 10 minutes of bzzz. Right? If you buzz for the sake of Allah, Allah is generous, He'll reward you for anything. Right? What are you doing in Ramadan? I'm making whipped cream and giving it out on the street. Why? Anything of the good you do, there's some reward in it. The difference between just giving out whipped cream and feeding the poor. Right? Similarly, the difference between just buzzing the dhikr and really meaning the dhikr that you say. Because dhikr is meanings in the hearts that are expressed in the tongue. Right? So it's better to do a little bit of dhikr, but try to move your heart with it. Right? By morning and by night. I'd heard about this. There's this Bedouin man, and it occurred to me when I first saw him, his name Hajj Azmi, that this man looks like what Sayyidina Musa might have looked. But then there's a young American guy came to Amman and he said, doesn't that guy look like Moses? I said, what do you know about Moses? But Hajj Azmi, used to sometimes hit himself at night and say, Him, Ya himaru ya bahi, move yourself in ecstasy, O donkey, O animal, right? Because Allah deserves that you move your heart in your remembrance of Him, right? And if you can't, then at least try to. Sometimes if you feel tired, walk around while you make dhikr. If you feel tired but you want to make dhikr, go splash some water on your face. Do something to wake yourself up. Right? Sometimes you feel exhausted, just make a quick dhikr. Ya Allah, I ask you for dhikr that is meaningful. Right? And to take the means to make dhikr meaningful. And this is one of the advices here, to say this each morning and night. The third advice was to take heed from the 8th person who was in the cave, who is the dog. Right? And that's on the merit of good company. That even if don't have the same purpose as the company you're keeping, but you just hang out with them, you will find residual benefit. You will find residual benefit. But the condition is that the company is genuinely good, and you keep the company with love, right? With respect and loyalty. These are 3 qualities of companionship in general, that there be love, there be respect, and there be loyalty. Right? Because the scholars of tafsir ask this question, that they went to sleep, why didn't the dog just go away? Right? Now one theory is, well, when Allah put them to sleep, He was put to sleep too. But there's some of the narrations, they're quite intriguing. Surah Kahf has all these intriguing nooks and crannies. One of them is that they say, but we don't know this, the Quranic thing, that the dog went to sleep much later. And there are some subtle indicators in the Quranic verses to this. But he remained there because he was loyal. And that's very intriguing. Right? Because initially, who was being honored? It was the youth. Right? The dog only got honored later. We don't know that for sure. And there's a lot of the Persian poetry touches upon that theme. But the dog remained. Why? Because he was loyal to the Ashab al-Kahf, right? So to seek out good company honored even a dog. But for humans, we know from the words of the Prophet ﷺ that al-mar'u ala dini khalil, a person's on the ways of their close friends. فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلْ. So let each of you look as to whom they take as close friends. The khalil, khilal is to interlace, that who are you close with, right? Who are you close with? And of course, we are close virtually as much as in real life, but we should seek out good company because that is one of the things that keeps hearts alive. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate such good company for us and for us to be of those who connect within family, in our circles of friends, and facilitate good company for others. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So that's the Council of Eights of Imam Bahraq, emphasizing making wudu with excellence and then making the testification of faith afterwards, but really meaning it, but reflecting on the levels of purity, purification itself for prayer, but then purification from sin, the purification of our character, and then purification from heedlessness. Secondly, to make the dhikr by morning and by night, to inculcate our sense of transcendence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is a dhikr that even the 8 angels of the throne bear witness to. And finally, the 8th person in the cave, who is the dog. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Although there is a very weak opinion that it wasn't actually a dog, it was actually a person called Kalb. But that's a narration from the biblical tradition, but it was a dog, according to most. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. It's also said, of course, that in Surah Kahf, Sundus is mentioned, wa istabraq. Some said Sundus is from Sindh, and Istabraq is a place in India. And Imam al-Alusi mentions that, and says only a Sindhi person or a Hindi person would believe something so weak. When I read the explanation, I was like, that makes so much sense. Sundus, fine garments, came from India, but then the end of the section he said only a Sindhi person or a Hindi person would believe that. I was like, dang. There are some Indian tafsir that mention that, but they didn't mention it being a weak opinion. But they're probably biased. والحمد لله رب العالمين نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم أستغفر الله سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم أستغفر الله سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم أستغفر الله. One of the times to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, is just before the sun sets. And many of the righteous would try to just set their alarm, like set a notification even a few minutes before Maghrib, even 3 minutes before Maghrib, 2 minutes before Maghrib, right? A minute before Maghrib, right? Because even a small act is made significant. To set an alarm just before it, you get a notification, and just make even a moment's dhikr or dua at that time. It's the encouragement has come to make dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when the sun is rising and when the sun is setting. And one of the simple ways to do that is the baqiyatu salihat, subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Right? And also to make dua for the best of what one could ask for. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate. There are 4 minutes. If water is served, just wait till the adhan. You've fasted all day. A minute won't hurt too much.